Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of The Franchise Entrepreneur, and I hope you are all well and doing okay. And if you're in the UK, enjoying the lovely rain. I always seem to get onto the weather, don't I? I feel actually like maybe I should change this to a weather forecast podcast. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're a bit like me, but sometimes my mood sometimes reflects the weather. It's probably a good idea if I don't look out the window so much. So today's subject, I would like to talk about some of the tough decisions. So basically, tough decision making. And of course, in this period that we're in, it doesn't need me to keep reminding people of how difficult it is, particularly within retail and hospitality, but across a number of businesses. You know, lockdown is beginning to be relaxed in the UK. Retail's opened up this week. I've been on the high street myself and done a bit of retail therapy, and definitely recommend everyone getting out there and spending their money because everybody needs it, and not just the independents. It's the big brands out there that need you as much as anybody. And we're all in it together. You know, this has really been a leveler for many businesses. But yeah, I mean, High Street in Chester looked, I wouldn't say busy, but certainly it's nice to see people out on the street going into shops. It's difficult, isn't it, with queuing up to go into retail. If you're a bit like me, I don't like queuing, and I tend to kind of walk past some of the stores that I wanted to go into if I see a queue outside it. And that's all well and good when the weather's pretty decent, but if you've got days like today and yesterday, that's really going to hurt. We've got one of our restaurants that's open for walk-in takeaways. Strangely enough, Chester Authority has banned all outside furniture for the time being. I know they're going to relax that, but why they've clamped down on it now, I don't know. But that's another subject altogether. Thank you very much, Chester, for your help. But the weather had a big impact on the sales, more so than it would normally, because of course you've got people that are queuing outside. Well, they're not going to queue outside in this weather, are they? Whereas before you had the option of people coming in and taking a seat, you don't have that option anymore. So we noticed yesterday's sales from the previous day when it was actually quite a nice sunny day, about a 30% drop. Well, that's, a 30% drop on pretty crappy sales figures anyway. So queuing has a significant impact, but that's, again, another subject. But it does all lead to certain, let's just say, certain conclusions that we're all going to have to come to at some point. And although we've had a fair amount of protection from the government in terms of furlough payments, grants, if you've been able to get any loans, etc., although those have to be paid back, in hospitality and retail, we've had a bit of a mothballing going on. So now we're coming out of that. This is where, as I've said before in a couple of previous podcasts, this is where tough decisions need to get made. I've talked about what the potential impacts are going to be, but then you have to draw a conclusion from those impacts. Some of us have probably already concluded that not all of our businesses are going to survive, and we've delayed those decisions because of furloughing and because we don't want to put people out of jobs unnecessarily and earlier than we need to. And I understand that because I'm no different. I'm in a similar position. I want to stress this, although I've got a very positive outlook on where I think the business is going to go, make no mistakes about this. This is a difficult period for us as well. We are not going to be immune from making tough decisions. Absolutely not. We have 20 or nearly 20 odd businesses in the UK, and then we've got the ones that are franchises abroad, and it's inevitable that not all of those are going to survive. With all the best will in the world, I can sit here and say, look, yeah, everything's brilliant. We're going to smash it. I do honestly believe we are going to be in a very good position, but it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be some casualties. The reality is when you're in business and you own a number of businesses, or you have a number of restaurants, or you have a number of retail shops, or whatever, the business evolves. Sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. Sometimes you make a mistake. You make a mistake as the business owner, that you've picked the wrong location, or that location happens to have changed over the years. High streets, obviously have gone through an awful lot over the years. And what you find is that, one part of town becomes quite fashionable, and then another part of the town becomes a bit of a dead area. But 3 or 4 years ago, it was the other way around. That area was the place to be, and now this area wasn't. And it moves. And unfortunately, when you've got fixed costs and bricks and mortar, you can't move with the times just because a particular area has become unfashionable, or it's because the big retailers that were down that end of town once have gone bust. So, the big stores that have all been in the papers, House of Fraser's been in trouble, Debenhams, the list goes on. They've been closing down. And that affects certain parts of the high street. Now, if you're unfortunate and you're in the wrong part of the town, then that has an impact on you. It's not necessarily your mistake, but the business has evolved. That high street has evolved. And when you've got those kind of high fixed costs, you cannot play the waiting game. You can't play it out, because it will come back at some point. It might take a couple of years, but you can't run a business on the basis of what might happen over the next 2 years. So you have to make some decisions. And that's just in the normal course of running a business. Throw in the pandemic and everything gets accelerated. And we are all still watching, learning, looking to see what our competitors are doing, but also looking to see what the impact's going to have on our individual stores. Are the customers going to come back in sufficient numbers? Has the market moved around? Have you pivoted? I'll give you an example on the pivot side. That there are restaurants out there that are now doing prepped meals and sending meals out. Now they would never have contemplated that before, and they may have say 7-8 restaurants. And they've been obviously furloughing staff, they've been mothballing their businesses, they've been, crapping themselves because they don't know what's going to play out. So they've pivoted, they've done the right thing, they've gone out there, they've done meal prep. Let's just say it's been successful. But when it comes then to opening up some of those restaurants, it could well be that, it's no longer viable for all of those restaurants to open. It's not the wrong decision to make to close those restaurants. It's a commercial decision, and I know it affects people's jobs, and it's a tough decision, but the sooner you make that decision, the better it is actually for the longevity of your business. Now, it doesn't mean that business is any less successful. In fact, all it means is that, the market is now moved. They've actually pivoted, and it could be very good fortune that they've pivoted. It could have been that this was a temporary measure, or they thought it was a temporary measure, but it's been so successful that they've now had to re-strategize, rethink their business model and say, well, actually, look, you know what? We don't need 6-7 restaurants now. I want a base of maybe 2 or 3 restaurants to keep my brand going. But you know what? I'm going to keep on sending out these prep meals all around the country because overheads are lower. I can get more done. I've got more capability of hitting all parts of the country. There's a demand for it, etc., etc. So there's an element of good fortune there, but on the outside, people might be looking at that business and saying, "Oh, it's failing. It's not doing too well." That's not the case, and I think some people, some business owners, and I've been tempted to in the past when things haven't worked out on certain areas to keep hold of businesses for too long, simply because I was worried about what other people might think of the brand and whether they thought it might be in trouble, or etc., etc. But the reality is, when the market moves and the outside influences hit your business, the best thing you can do is actually be very decisive in your decision making for everyone's benefit, however difficult that may be. And it is difficult. You've built up a bit. No one builds and opens up stores in order to close them down. No one does that. Yeah, it's a tough decision to make. And if we had to do that in ours, it's a tough decision because we franchise our brand. So it sends out a mixed signal when you're closing down a store, but then advertising for franchising. So it's not a decision that you take lightly, but I actually think you should take the positives from it and actually say, well, actually, this shows some strength in our management because we recognise that certain things have changed now and we've got the strength to be decisive and make decisions where they're needed. So, there's two ways of looking at that, I guess. But the reality is that the market has changed. You will be faced with some tough decisions. And I've known businesses that have actually gone completely bust because they refused to make the tough decisions early enough. That somehow things were just going to miraculously change and everything was going to be all right. Now, the reality is that change quite often, positive change, only comes about through your actions and through decisions that you make. You have to force the issue. You have to make things happen. But again, there's no point in smashing your head against a brick wall if you're looking at one of your stores and going, well, the market has really changed for it. What can I do? Can I protect those jobs? Can I offer them other jobs elsewhere? When you've got one individual business, one individual store, you're normally working within it. You've normally got a lot more control over it. You can also control some of your costs better, simply by you working it more. And in the short term, most business owners are prepared to, throw the kitchen sink at it in terms of their hours and so on. But when you've got multiple restaurants or retail or businesses, it's a lot more difficult to do that. You have to sometimes cut away the dead wood in order to protect the rest of the business. Now, one of the reasons that I'm talking about that now is because I've got, people are under the impression that, just because I'm being positive and I believe that the market is going to be really exciting over the next 12 to 18 months, particularly in my sector, in franchising and in hospitality. But I also, I'm not stupid. There will be casualties, and I have some stores that are probably borderline at the moment. And the reality is that I don't know at the moment if all of those businesses will survive, because we're playing it by ear in terms of how many people are coming back to the high street. High Street's only been open really this week for most of the retail. 4th of July is obviously earmarked for restaurants, cafes, etc. to welcome customers into their stores, although we can do takeaway delivery collections now. So that's where you'll be making the assessments pretty quickly. Now, again, we've got stores that are in locations like universities and things like that. Now, the reality is that, 4th of July won't make any difference to those because the students have gone. What will make a difference to that is what the universities decide on what their decision is going to be in terms of overseas students coming back, what the take-up is in terms of their numbers into the term, the summer term. Again, I can't influence any of that. So I have to wait and see what someone else is doing in order for me to assess the impact on my business and therefore make a decision on it. And that's likewise with a couple of our franchisees as well, because they're in certain locations that are similar to that. But the real important part of this message is that, one, no one comes out of this unscathed, right? That's a reality. No one comes out of it unscathed. Even that example that I gave of a business that is pivoted and is doing meal prep meals, they will probably still be faced with a choice that maybe one or two of their restaurants are not viable anymore and unnecessary now. But that doesn't mean that they're not being successful. And I don't want anyone else to be thinking that just because you've had to close one or two stores, or even if you've had to change direction completely and change the business that you're in, maybe you only have one restaurant, one retail shop or whatever, and it's been impacted so much that you've had to give that business up. That does not make you a failure. It just means that business didn't work. You go on to the next thing. And you would have learned a lot of lessons from this. So it's tough decision time, fast approaching. Do not avoid making those tough decisions. Even if it is closing down your one business, it's better for you to close that business down and protect your mental well-being and your financial well-being. I've seen people who have hung on far too long because their ego has got in the way, and they've lost everything. They've lost a home, they've lost their marriage, they've lost everything simply because they just would not accept that business had not made it, and because they didn't want to be deemed a failure. It's not about you being a failure, right? This pandemic is not about people failing. It's about something that's completely out of your hands having a massive impact on you. Yeah, maybe your business was having a tough time beforehand, but this has probably been the nail in the coffin. You should not be looking at yourself in any way, shape or form as a failure. And if you're in a situation where you have multiple businesses and you have to trim those businesses in order to move forward, then that's what you have to do. It doesn't mean that your business is not a viable one going forward. It just means that you're doing the right thing. You're making the right decisions. You're making the tough decisions when they're needed, and you are managing your business. Managing your business is not all about making all the nice decisions. It's about making some of the shitty decisions. In fact, it's more about making the shitty decisions that shape you as a business owner. Being able to make those tough decisions is what makes a difference. It's about recognizing that you have to make a decision and then making it. There's a lot of businesses out there that have probably, big businesses that should have made tough decisions years ago and put them off. And they're now, they're in serious, serious trouble. So you can still grow in this period. And my business is one of those. We've done some great deals over this period of lockdown, but it doesn't mean that I won't have to trim elsewhere, whilst at the same time looking for new franchises and new opportunities to grow my business. That's just good management. You look at what's working and what isn't working, and you strategize on that basis. It's not an ideal situation. I'd love to be in a position where we're not going to close any stores, but I can't promise that. And I won't be able to make those decisions until I have all of the facts in front of me. And I won't have those for a while yet. I may have an inkling on what certain stores are likely to look like, but it's still too soon for me to be making a final decision on those. But that doesn't stop me from having a really big push on our franchising, because it doesn't mean that anything's changed materially in terms of, do I believe our business is fundamentally viable and a good prospect for franchises? Absolutely. Does that mean that every one of them succeed? No, it doesn't. And that doesn't necessarily have to reflect badly. Most of the biggest franchises out there have got stores that they've had to close down, and they're going to get a lot more that they're going to have to close down. So you can still grow through this period. And I know some people might say that you're sending out a mixed message there. On the one hand, you're still saying you're growing, and on the other hand, you're closing some stores down. That's just the reality of anyone that knows business. You shouldn't have to explain this too hard to any of your potential prospects or franchisees that are coming to you. If they're very inexperienced and they need a lot of convincing on this, then they are probably not for you anyway, because they're showing probably a lack of understanding on how business works. Of course, they're going to ask you to demonstrate that this is not a fundamental flaw with a business, and that this, maybe your closing downs are being for very specific reasons in those particular areas. But beyond that explanation, if you're finding that you're having to spend a lot of time just keep on going over it and saying and trying to convince them that, look, it's still okay, it probably shows a lack of knowledge on their part. Anyone with any kind of business experience will know that not everything succeeds all of the time. And they will also know that there are going to be casualties in this pandemic that are quite often out of your control. You can't control what a landlord wants to do, or how uncompromising they are going to be, or that some of the bigger retailers around you have closed, and that's going to have a significant impact, that maybe foreign students are not going to come back, or all of these sort of things can add up to a store closure. People who have got any kind of grounding in business or understanding the business will understand that. They will understand that, over here you're advertising, you're growing, you're looking for more franchises, but over here you might have had to make some tough decisions and close one or two. That's the reality of the situation that we're in at the moment. Don't be scared of that. Don't believe that it will hold you back, because it won't. Have confidence in your business and your concept, and most importantly, in yourself, that you are capable of making the right decisions at the right time. And if that means that you've got to make some tough decisions, then so be it. Will not be the first or last time that you have to make tough decisions like this. But the important thing is that you take the action that is necessary to protect your business. And the responsibility lies with you to protect people's jobs as well. So sometimes, you have to make those decisions on an individual store in order to protect a lot of other jobs. So I'm not one of these people that want to, go onto social media trying to gloat over other businesses' unfortunate situations, particularly over this period. I've had a few harsh things to say about certain restaurant groups, but that's nothing to do with a pandemic. Some of the decisions that they've made over the years have led them to this situation. What we're experiencing now is something that's completely out of everyone's control. So there shouldn't be anyone shaming other businesses on what the unfortunate situation that they might be in, or they have to do. Continue to recognize that you're going to get lots of opportunities over this period. Recognize that you will have to make some tough decisions. Be decisive in those decisions. Do not dilly-dally on them. You have to make that tough decision and then move on to the next thing. And then try and grow your business again, because the opportunities will be there. I'm 100% certain that those opportunities will be there. This will go from pandemic to recession mode. And the recession will have a lot of commonality with every other recession that has been and come and gone before it. And that always leaves opportunities there. So, make sure your business is fundamentally strong. Accept that not everything is going to go your way. If you get the rubber to green and you've managed to pivot and that has worked out very well for you, fantastic. But that may also mean that you will still have to make some decisions to reshape your business. If you're bricks and mortar and you've been able to go online and do pre-prepped meals, you may make the decision that, well, actually, you know what? I no longer need bricks and mortar. I don't need to have all this overhead. And that may not have anything to do with the financial viability or the pandemic. It may just be that you've struck gold on a decision and now you're pivoting in a different direction. Again, to the outside world, they might think your business failed. Well, the reality is that, you know different. So, I've done this podcast specifically because people have said to me that I'm optimistic and they like that. And that's great. I'm appreciate the feedback that people are liking what I'm saying in terms of me being optimistic about the future, because I absolutely am, not just with my business, but in general for the food and beverage side that I'm specifically involved in. But at the same time, I'm conscious that people are not seeing that there is also tough decisions to be made. And I am not immune from that. And I will have to make one or two of those along the way. And from the outside looking in, you might think that everything is rosy, everything's 100% within Des's business. Well, no, because we've still got the same issues that you are going through as well. And we will have to make the same decisions that you are making. We've pivoted in certain areas. We've done a lot of good things over this period. But this is an evolving situation that we're in. And we will not be immune from making tough decisions. And it's important that you know that people that are looking successful on the outside are still facing some of the tough decisions. And because they're positive on the outside doesn't mean that they don't have bad days. And it doesn't mean that they don't have to make some of these shitty decisions that are going to have to be made at some point. I'm still hoping to avoid some of those decisions, but I'm prepared to make the tough ones as and when they are necessary and be decisive about it. And you need to be as well. And then once you've made that decision, don't dwell on it, move on, keep expanding your business if that's what it is that you want to do. And don't be ashamed of having to make a tough decision. It's actually a positive thing in terms of your ability, and shows ability and strength within you to have to not only recognize, but actually be willing and able to carry out those decisions. So, again, I finished this with, I am positive. I am thinking things are going to be pretty positive over the next 18 months, but there are going to be some clouds, a bit like the weather today. There's going to be the odd downpour here and there, and we all get wet, don't we? We all get wet in a downpour. No one avoids that. So let's stay positive. Don't let any outside influences get you down on the tough decisions that you have to make. You're doing the best that you can, and that's important to remember. You can only do the best that you can. And good luck for the future. I'm sure that you will make the best decision that you can, and that's all that you can do. And remember, you might be looking back on this in 12 months' time and say, well, actually, you know what? That having to be forced into making some of those decisions was actually a good thing in the end, because it took the business in a different direction. It actually made it stronger. It actually took us to another level. And you'll maybe hopefully see some of the positives that hopefully will come out from all of this. So take care, look after yourselves. I hope the weather's going to improve. I think it is next week, so hopefully I will be in a really good mood on Monday, because I'm pretty sure I've seen sun for Monday. So take care. Talk to you again on Monday. Tune in. Please leave any reviews, any ideas. We are still working on interviews, by the way, for up and coming episodes. We've got 2 in the bank at the moment. Those are going to start coming out in July. And so that will break up the format a little bit instead of me just talking all the way through it. So yeah, I'm excited about that. That's a different format. We've got some good guests on there as well. So, and you know what? I keep forgetting to do something on all of my podcasts. I have a tag that I normally use, or I used to use, or I've been using it less of late. And I think I should go back to carrying on using that because I think it's relevant, really relevant for the periods that we're in now. And that is my sign off, which is don't let your reality of today get in the way of your dreams. And if that is not relevant to today, I don't know what is. So take care and talk to you again soon.